Welcome back to Swoop Luke. A bit of a different episode. We've done an episode like this before where there was an article released today on the Herald Sun / Code Sports, which is what I'm using. It's with Glenn Macfarlane, Mick, McGuane, and Craig McRae. And I was reading it and I thought there was some very interesting tidbits that I wanted to talk to you guys about. And instead of just doing a video, just me talking about it, I'm going to put the article up here or here. I can't remember where I'm going to put it. And we'll go through the article together. Now, before we jump into the article, I can see that 50% or thereabouts of my viewers aren't subscribed. If you can, if you're logged into your Google account, just hit that subscribe button. It would mean the absolute world to me. I'm trying to hit goals, and that support would mean everything. And it's free. You can subscribe for free. You don't have to buy merch or anything like that. Buying merch would be awesome, but subscribing would be free. And if you could do that, it would mean just absolutely everything. Let's get into this video. Okay, so this video is going to have everything. It starts off by saying, we're going to be talking about Brayden Maynard's future, list management, Scott Pendlebury, and we start with this little bit about Thursday's game against Carlton and Peter Mack and what it does. And, Craig McRae comes here and says, when Peb's got, he went into remission a day after Dale Tapping's passing, which was from myeloma. It's just insane how the sort of world works and life works. But what I liked about this sort of section here, he says it gives you, a lot of perspective and how lucky we are to do things like that. And he says here, I say often we fight for ground balls, people are fighting for life. And it literally does put it into perspective that win or loss, it's literally just a game. There are bigger battles going on. And I think that's what makes Craig McRae such a good coach. He does have this perspective on life, and it's definitely changed my perspective on life and how I go about my business and doing my life and doing those sort of things. So I thought that was a really, really nice thing. And it is just a special day, and to share it with your biggest rival, your enemy, just makes it all that more special. Then we get down to the nitty gritty, Darcy Cameron versus TDK. McGuane here rightly says Darcy Cameron is a bit underestimated. How important has he been? Craig McRae goes on to talk about, when we got rid of Brodie Grundy, it opened up to let Darcy Cameron grow. And we've seen Darcy Cameron finish second in the Copeland, which is insane. He's a premiership ruckman now. And he says here, he has really sticky hands. And the best thing about Darcy Cameron, yes, took that game-saving mark that you can see here against the Western Bulldogs, but I love when he floats down back and takes those marks all the time. He's becoming Mr. Reliable, and that's why I think Mason Cox just can't get back into the side, because the combo of Darcy Cameron and Mick Stay at the club at the moment is second to none. TDK is just an incredible player, probably looking at an All-Australian Blazer this season. So Darcy does have his work cut out for him. The biggest thing here one of the biggest things was to talk about Bruzzy. Now, the Herald Sun came out yesterday and said that Collingwood have offered him a 4-year deal, and on big money. They were not going to budge on a fifth. Bruzzy wants a 5th year. And it's just semantics now. They're saying that the Kangaroos have offered 6 years. The Kangaroos are saying that they haven't, but they would like someone like Bruzzy. You'd be dumb to, if you were Collingwood, you'd be a bit dumb to go, okay, here's 4 years and a trigger for a 5th. If you can get these clauses, bang, you get a 5th. And then everyone's happy. 4 years would take him to, he's 29, 30, 31, 32, like 32, 33 or thereabouts. So 4 years is still good on big money as well. The ball is literally in Brayden Maynard's court and his manager's court. Now, Craig McRae here says, McFarlane says, how hard will you fight to keep Brayden Maynard? McRae says, we're not in a hurry to get rid of Bruz. Ultimately, free agency is there for a reason. It allows players to explore. And Bruzzy is much loved. I tell him every day. He says, it's a big decision. And like all of these are big decisions with free agency and stuff. We saw Oscar Allan, the captain of the West Coast Eagles, talking to Sam Mitchell. This is going to happen more and more and more. And I'm sure Collingwood are talking to free agents as well. It'd be stupid if they haven't talked to like LDU or someone, or had to sit down with him or something like that. What I liked about this section is the fact, so McGuane says, are you confident you will keep Brayden? McRae says, my heart says yes, but we are living in a business world. I don't think they are in a hurry to make a decision. So that, to me, says that Brayden Maynard's going to wait a little bit longer, just holding out, see if the Pies come in with that fifth year or do the Kangaroos offer. I honestly think it's about 60-40 at the moment. I want to say 70-30. My heart is still saying, like Craig McRae, that Brayden Maynard stays at the Pies because like we were talking on Footy Abroad, I just can't see Brayden Maynard getting that, that grit, that determination for another club that isn't black and white. And like even Brayden Maynard said, it'll just be weird seeing him in another jumper. Craig McRae here goes around and clarifies his picks over players, saying, at the time, with the players that we were talking to, we wanted those players and not picks, but we're going to need picks sometimes. Like that, I think that was just blown up, just way out of proportion. We still had picks. But now look who we've got. We've got Dan Houston because we're giving away a first-round pick and stuff like that. So I think very, very smart. Pendles, the sub. So McGuane says, Scott Pendlebury still sort of iconic figures. That defensive cover midfield role is so important to the way you set up the ground. Who is the next midfielder who could play that role? Now, this is something that every Collingwood supporter has asked themselves. What do we look like when Pendles isn't around? Who is going to take up that Pendles spot? Because it is so important. McRae says, I'm glad you see that stuff, Mick. People see age and speed on the game, but Pendles plays an integral role. It is hard to replace that role because he is so clever. And you can see that little stop thing there. Very, very clever. McRae goes on to say, we are even now talking about playing Pendles in a slightly different role, which is very, very interesting. So we can get someone to one day replace him in that role. We have been doing it subtly. It is a unique role if you watch the way we play, but Ned Long is showing some great signs, probably why he signed for 2 years. Harry Perryman was one we trialled there in the preseason. Jordan De Goey can play that role too. So I like that, they're saying that they're already thinking about the future. Of course they are. Saying that Pendles is playing a slightly different role, so it allows other guys to fill that role and see what they need. It looks like, Ned Long and Harry Perryman could be those guys to fill that Pendles need and that Pendles role there. And Pendles plays that different role throughout the game, which is pretty interesting. I'd probably, out of those two, I'd probably go for Perryman over Ned Long, just because I think Perryman is a bit more, has a bit more finesse about him than Ned Long does. But chucking Jordan De Goey's name in there is interesting as well. I can't see Geordie as a Pendles type player, but that's very interesting. We already know what's happened with the sub, and that's been, that was talked about like 4 or 5 weeks ago. They talk about here, would you love to see Pendles break Brent Harvey's record? It's 432. So Pendles would need to play next season. A touch wood, no injuries between them. He says he is a selfless guy. So it's a week-to-week thing, and Pendles has even said that himself. Remember, Pendles' contract expires at the end of this year. So it's a week-to-week. If they want him to stay on, and if he wants to stay on, he'll stay on for next year. I dare say he does. When you're this close, surely, right? Absolutely surely. We talk here about our recruits now. We can see from the outside what Dan Houston has brought to the on-field mix. Internally, how has he fitted in? He can take intercept marks. He can gather at ground level. Then he can execute it. These are rare finds. That's why you push hard at free agency to get players like him. So that's why, and it goes back to the point before, why we chose players over picks for this trade and draft period. And in saying that, we did get some good picks in. Hayes, Cochrane, and Charlie West, they could all be really, really, really great players. Plus you're adding Houston, Perryman, who wasn't, a free agent, and then Membry, who was a delisted free agent. And talking about Perryman, he goes on to talk about Perryman here. His contest work stood out. Then you get him into the games, and he has 12 tackles and added different value. Things we've been missing. If you remember from the start of pre-season as well, Scott Pendlebury on the Howie Games podcast came out and said that he sees Harry Perryman as a Luke Ball type of player, which is very interesting. A couple years ago, 2023, I said that Tom Mitchell was that Luke Ball player, the thing that was missing. And you can see when Harry Perryman starts in the midfield like he did against the Giants and like he did against Port Adelaide, he does add a bit of a difference, or not a bit, a big difference to our midfield rotations and roster. And then a couple weeks ago against Footscray, Reece McGuinness goes down. He has to play that half-back role. He doesn't have a big game because he's not playing that midfield role. But then Craig McRae goes on to say here, there was about 10 seconds to go in that Footscray game, and he spoils the ball that maybe gets marked. Internally, he's fast becoming much loved. We talk about Tim Membry with my check and McStay. I love this. Membry says, whatever you need, mate, I'll start on the bench. You know, he is selfless. He's a great family man, always smiling. It's a long year, but the chemistry will grow. We know the Triple M's. I've said they're going to kick 100 goals between them this season. They're pretty far off at the moment, but, you know, we'll see what they can pull up against Carlton. Now, this is another really, really big one that I've been seeing. So we're going to talk about Reece McGuinness, Ed Allan, and there's a little tidbit about Harvey Harrison as well. So, you know, we know about what happened with Reece McGuinness. The main thing here is Macfarlane saying, will you take a ready-made defender in the mid-season draft? And McRae says, we are looking all the time. Reece is definitely out for the year. So that's one mid-season draft pick we're getting. But then he adds, we have Harvey Harrison, who is not quite ruled out. He has had a little setback. So it's going to be a challenge for him to play this year. That timeline is not quite finalised yet. So, one, no mention of Ash Johnson. I've seen that Ash Johnson could return towards the end of the year. So not a long-term injury. But it looks like, from what Craig McRae is saying here, and given context clues around the mid-season draft, Harvey Harrison could be put back on the long-term injury list because he was due back around July, August. But if he's had a setback and we don't see him till September, October, you put him on the long-term injury list, then you've got 2 picks in the draft, and maybe, you know, there was talk about Charlie McCartan as a 196 centimeter intercepting defender who's about 25, 26 years old, or Tomlinson, and then going for another maybe small forward or something like that. But 2 active picks in the mid-season draft. I think that's what Craig McRae is talking about here. But this is what everyone comes for, right? Why was Ed Allan dropped after opening round? And then he says something really, really cool here. Here. He said, Ed Allan is part of our future. I tell him daily, weekly, hey, we want you in the team. I told him 4 weeks out before round 1. So, out before round 0. So that's a month before the GWS game. Hey, we want to give you every opportunity to play, but there are some little things in your game you need to tidy up. He is playing above the level at the VFL, and that's what we want to see. He is coming with us. So Ed Allan is a big centerpiece to our future. I think what he needed to tidy up was his defensive work, his pressure ratings. When we made that team talk video a few weeks ago when he got dropped after that opening round game, that was the only knock that I could find from the stats. Obviously, you know, the football club have more stats that we don't see, but it looked like it was that tackling, it was that pressure, and that's why, you know, Lockie Sullivan plays a different role to him, Ned Long plays a different role to him. He does name check Finn McRae here as well, saying this is a journey and will be judged at the end. Some judged us from the start. It's a squad mentality as well. So that's going to be a little bit interesting to see what happens with Finn, if we can fit Finn, Ned, and Ed Allan in the same team. I don't think so, but we'll see. Another big one is rebuilding Jordan Goey. McGuane says, you know, he lost his power to burst out of contests, you know, with the groin injuries that he sustained last season. McRae says pretty much for all of last year, he couldn't run at 100%. He was down to his lowest in the 70s at training, and we were still putting him out there. So that was when McRae kept saying, these guys are fit to play, but are they fit to perform? So Jordan Goey was obviously fit to play, but wasn't fit to perform. A 70% running capacity of Jordan Goey isn't going to help us, because we know, like, and they name check it here, the 2023 prelim final was Jordan Goey's some of his best ever work. We know what he can bring. He wasn't bringing that in 2024. What I do like in this, he says he is now running at 100% in his training. The power is back in his running. We would like to think that this will translate back into games. We saw it a little bit against Footscray, remembering that that was his first game back in about 200 or something days. So it will take a little bit of time. I hope to see it against Carlton. I hope he blitzes the Carlton midfield because, like I said, Carlton are going to start strong. They're going to slow down in that second half. They're really going to push. That's when we come through. And to have 100% running Jordan De Goey is not only tantalizing, absolutely scary as well. There you go. How important is Jordan De Goey to complement, Pendlebury and Nick Daicos? McGuane says, we need someone to win the ball, someone to get them on the outside, and someone who has structured role in that as well. Geordie is a powerful beast. His strengths are so huge. He's a connector and a score assist guy too. So we did really miss Jordan De Goey last year. We did miss him in the first couple of games as well. So hopefully now we see an injury-free Jordan De Goey who's just going to take his game to the next level this season. You couldn't have a Collingwood interview without mentioning the Daicos boys. The interesting thing here is he says, with the tag coming, McGuane says, with the tag coming back into vogue, could we see Matt Cottrell play on Nick this Thursday? McRae says Hewitt has gone to him a few times. So expect to see a Hewitt, Nick Daicos matchup. And then, here. So now we're talking about the opening round game against the GWS Giants. I don't know why I said the GWS Giants. McRae says, if you look at the Giants game, you go, tag Nick and it worked. Well, Nick blew himself up. His GPS figures in the first half was ridiculous. He did more high-speed running in that first half than he has done in some games. So he knows he can run really well, and that challenges most opponents. So in saying that, that's probably why, or not probably, that's definitely why he was cramping up towards the third and that last quarter against the Giants, because he did more high-speed running in the first half than he has done in some games, which is absurd. To hit the ground running in, it was so humid, because I was there. It was so humid, so gross, so hot as well. So props to Nick for being able to do that. But one thing that I really love, so he talks here about Darcy Moore's leadership. McGuane says, has it gone to the next level? McRae says, I'm glad you've noticed that. We have been deliberately catching up weekly since starting back. I think he has grown. Part of his leadership has grown, which is absolutely amazing. But in a big hint to the future captaincy of Collingwood, McGuane asks, is Nick Daicos his successor? McRae says, I think we would all want Nick to fulfill his potential in the leadership space. We would give him every chance to do that. You look at the votes from the leadership group this year when they were voting for vice captains and captaincies like that, and the feedback for this would be yes. Nick Daicos will be Collingwood's next captain after Darcy Moore gives that captaincy up. The sort of last bit here, we're talking more about Fly and his future. Macfarlane says, do you see yourself coaching Collingwood beyond your current deal at the end of 2026? McRae says, I do love my job. I'm starting to feel comfort in the job. The comfort is in the doing, in the process. I came in quite experienced, but still inexperienced. And he's saying that so when you talk beyond that in contract terms, I struggle to sit in that space. So he goes, do today well and do it really well. He knows what tomorrow looks like, but going past 2026 when his contract expires, he doesn't know what that looks like. I do really hope that he stays on for a few more years. I have a feeling that Tasmania could come out and try to poach him, maybe. So that's going to be an interesting thing as well. You know, next year. 2026 is next year. 2026 is going to be absolutely huge. It goes on to talk about, aligning with Jeff Brown, Barry Karp, Graham Wright, Charlie Gardner, and if he'll ever be in the coach's box, because we can see Craig McRae here always on the bench. And he says here, I have an eye for the game. I can see stuff down here. I have a brilliant assistants which give me great trust. Talks about Hayden Skipworth. I find the box quite confining, whereas the bench is like freedom, talking to your players. So that's why, if you ever wonder why Craig McRae is never in the coach's box, that's why he just finds it a little bit better on the ground. This is another interesting bit. If you were Andrew Dillon for a day, is there anything you would change? McRae says, I think we could trim the fat of the game pretty quickly. I don't think anyone would care if we lost 3 or 4 minutes per quarter. This goes back to shortening the quarters like what Dangerfield was talking about. I think it should be shortened as well. These games are going for way too long. And I'm not talking about COVID shortening at 17 minutes or whatever it is. Just a couple of minutes. We shouldn't be playing 35-minute quarters. That's just absolutely absurd. I think there should be no time on. Whatever it is, 25 minutes, bang, you're done. That's it. Or half an hour, bang, you're done. No more stopping the ball or anything like that. It just keeps playing. And I think that's how it should be. But that is the whole article. You can go to Coach Sports, read that. It is behind a paywall, so that's why I've put it up, so you can sort of have a read while I'm going through it as well. What are your thoughts? There were some really interesting things in there. The Harvey Harrison, the Brayden Maynard, Nick Daicos, I think definitely being our next captain. Let me know your thoughts down below. But until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, and until next time, double shackers, I'll soup you later.